At the point of filming this video, I've experienced 21 days on Iona, 7 days cruising the Norwegian fjords and 4 days cruising to the Canary Islands and back. So 2 very different cruises. Unless you're a crazy cruise fanatic, and those people do exist, that is sufficient time to form a view of the experience. This is not a review of Iona the ship specifically. This is a discussion on how Iona worked for me based on my particular wants as a solo introvert who is on a cruise. It's similar to the video I did on the Norwegian Bliss from the same perspective. It's worth clarifying what my expectations are for an introvert experience, as introverts are a varied breed. To summarise, I'm perfectly happy spending vast majorities of the cruise on my own. It's not that I don't like talking to people. It happens all the time, even quite a lot. But I favour organic conversations that spring up on an excursion or when sharing a pool or before a show, rather than ones that are forced on me like communal dining or an organised fun activity. I also don't tend to attach myself to people in that holiday friend sort of way, so I can do things with them throughout the trip. I actually look for the cruise to be like a floating, all-inclusive resort where I get to do a lot of reading, writing, thinking and contemplating, while also partaking of the ship's amenities and entertainment, while getting to see interesting places. As an introvert travelling solo, I believe one of the most important elements for me is the environment of the ship and what it offers. You want places you can go and be perfectly happy occupying yourself, which for me, as I say, tends to be reading, writing and a good bit of thinking. On the Fjords cruise, I read 5 books in 7 days, right? And people go, was that all you do, read? It's like, no, I went on excursions for at least half a day. I ate, I walked the deck to keep my steps up. It's just when I'm divorced from normal life and my brain is free, I can consume a lot of books. This led me to believe I could expect to read 10 books in 14 days. That did not happen. I found out I tapped out at 6 in about the first week, telling me that my brain has a reading limit before it says, do something else now. Regrettably, Iona doesn't have anything as amazing as the observation lounge on the Norwegian Bliss. I did love that observation lounge. It's the perfect introvert contemplating environment. But it does have some good introvert friendly environments. In good weather, you have an amazing wraparound promenade deck. I mean, it's an astounding feature that allows you to walk around the full circle of the ship. I know other ships have these, but Iona's the first one where I've fully experienced a free wraparound deck. It is brilliant. I use the promenade in 2 ways. It's obviously relax and read location and an exercise location. I use the promenade to walk, think and get my step count in, as doing multiple laps around the ship it was just fantastic. It's surprising how bad the weather can get before this isn't enjoyable. Unless it's really, really raining, even if it's like windy or a bit cold, you just put a few layers on and you've got the freedom of the wraparound deck. Amazing. The second place I spent most of my time was in the Sky Dome. The Sky Dome is essentially a main sort of pool deck, but it exists under a glass dome as it's viable in the inclement weather. You can obviously see how this worked quite well when cruising the fjords. It tends to remind me a lot of it's not as elaborate, but it tends to remind me of the pool areas in places like Centre Parks, which have similar domes for similar reasons, right? I favour the lounges that look out to sea via the floor to ceiling windows that they have in there. The challenge is everyone thinks the same. It can be a bit of an exercise in counter-programming the cruise to avoid the main flow. You see how it works, right? If you eat early, then you're wanting that seating while other people are in the main dining room, that sort of thing. The third location was the library, which I tended to use when my brain shifted to writing stuff. I didn't favour reading in there for some reason, and it was definitely a third option by a significant margin. The library is basically a very small, only a tenth as good, but it's as close as you're going to get observation lounge, but with no windows. So yeah, I wrote a few articles in there. I spent nowhere near as much time in there as I did the Sky Dome and on the promenade, but it was it was a third possible option. There is also the Atrium, spread across numerous floors with floor-to-ceiling windows for its full height. I mean, there is no doubt that place is spectacular, and many people do spend a lot of time in there. It's very impressive, but while other people happily seem to be able to use it for sitting around, I just can't. I don't find the seats comfortable, and I just couldn't sit in there for hours. I just couldn't do it. The last thing you want as a solo introvert when cruising is for eating alone being culturally uncomfortable. I found the experience frictionless, to be fair. I was accepted as a solo booking without question and served as a solo visitor without question. The only time it was mentioned was the server making sure he could take away half the cutlery. Ironically, the only time the experience did feel very uncomfortable was when I was in the main dining restaurant, and wow, it was uncomfortable. But that was nothing to do with the main dining restaurant or the server. The P&O experience was fine. It's because I seemed to be surrounded, right, by couples of various ages. You didn't want to talk to each other. They'd fiddle with their phones, they'd look at anything but each other. There was about 4 or 5 of them all doing the same thing. And I felt uncomfortable for them, so then I felt uncomfortable. But wow, yeah, some people definitely ran out of conversation. When I was talking to a fellow solo traveller while taking in the rays on the promenade, she did share she was asked if she wanted to sit with a group. So if your introvert style involves being able to share your experience a bit at the end of the day over a meal, you can definitely do that, and it's an option. It's just maybe you have to ask, because I didn't get asked, right? I did notice on my Canary Islands cruise, which I don't think was on the Fjords cruise, but I may just be forgetting, that there was an option on the website that you book all these things if you book in advance to choose, you know, whether you wanted to share a table or not. I always ask myself this question when it comes to doing things as solo introvert: does anyone care? It was the question I've asked myself on every solo experience. Did anyone care? As that's what tends to break the experience, right? If you're surrounded by people who think it's odd and or people who seem to feel the need to alleviate you from your horrible predicament. I was very surprised to find that literally no one cares. I found Iona to be set at exactly the same level as my experience on the NCL Bliss. Literally no one cared, all across the crew and other guests. There was nothing about the ship's organisation, the culture of the line, or the nature of the guest that raised any challenges along the way. So what is the ultimate verdict? Does cruising on Iona get the solo introvert cruising thumbs up? Yes, it does. But I've learned a few things across these Iona cruises with respect to my introvert solo cruising experience generally, not about Iona itself. 14 days is probably too long. The itinerary would have to be really something special and unique for me to consider that length of cruise. I'd be looking for something, what is that difference that makes it worthwhile? I wouldn't just do it for 14 days of relaxations, right? Basically, I'd need inputs to sustain the experience for that length, as just doing things I can do at home, if I could relax more, doesn't cut it for 14 days of time. I also think I'm not going to turn into a serious, hardcore serial cruiser. I mean, these people exist. It's becoming very clear these experiences are very objective, outcome and destination based. This whole cruise culture of doing similar itineraries on the same ships year after year and accumulating days and days of cruise time, it's not going to happen. Even experiencing Iona across 21 days between 2 cruises started to stretch my limits. Familiarity breeds contempt for me, while for others it generates appeal. What you probably want to know is what my opinion is of cruising on P&O Iona is like as a cruise line experience. Well, you can do that by checking out the video on the screen right now.